I'm gonna guess that you just got a Z-Cam. If you didn't and you're just looking for some different settings, I hope that I can help. And for those of you that are new to cinema cameras in general, maybe this will help you become a little bit less overwhelmed. No matter which camera you have in the lineup, everything will apply apart from resolutions and maybe just a few other little tiny things. If you have an iPhone or an Android or a tablet, I would highly recommend setting that up to use as your source right now for monitoring. Once you've got it turned on, let's go into Menu, go down to System, and then scroll down a little bit, and we're gonna hit User button. These are the buttons that you should really customize to your own liking, but if you just wanna follow along and do what I have, ISO is a function, VFR for function 1, load profile, aperture, END, scroll down here, we got playback, the magnifier as the OK button, the up button is going to be shutter, and the down button is going to be white balance. I'll get more into why I have it set up this way in a little bit. Once you get connected to your phone via Wi-Fi or the USB-C connection, we can go ahead and get started by sliding up on the phone from the middle. Let's go ahead and go into the actual settings themselves. And what we're going to do here, at least what I'm going to do, is I'm going to scroll almost to the bottom and hit More. I'm not going to show you everything. I'm just going to show you which ones are most important to get going. Again, this is the S6, which is a Super 35mm 6K camera. So I have a few more options than the original E2. Let's say that I want to shoot in Cinema 6K. Cinema 6K has a little bit of a wider aspect than normal 6K, so you get a few more pixels. And the project frames per second, just set this as 23.98 or 24, or if you have a good reason for 29.97, go for it. The file format, I have it set as MOV because I do work on Apple. If you are on a PC, maybe look into MP4 and see if that would work better. For the playback frame rate, I believe this is the first thing that you're gonna really wanna change, and let's set it to VFR. I don't like the default, and what the default does is if we change our frame rate to, let's say 48, and we film and we play it back on the camera, it's going to show slow motion. I don't like that because in post-production it's going to be slow motion as well, and I don't like that baked into the actual file. It causes more work and it even causes some issues with syncing audio. Scrolling down to video, we're going to skip the variable frame rate and just go right to the encoder. I like to use H.265 because it's really efficient and it keeps file sizes down, but it does run a little bit slower on editors, so you may need to proxy your footage if you do this. If you don't want to proxy and you have a lot of storage, definitely go with one of the ProRes options. And basically the difference from the top down to the bottom of the ProRes options is your bit rate. So proxy is going to be a much lower bit rate than ProRes 422. If you are shooting H.265 and you want to save even more space, then go ahead and change the bit rate to medium or low. I actually do this when I'm filming weddings and I'm shooting a ceremony, or if I'm doing what I am right now as a talking head, I go to medium bit rate. The profiles on the Z-Cam are pretty straightforward. If you're not comfortable with color grading, just go ahead and shoot Rec. 709. It is so wonderful on this camera. Definitely probably the best natural profile I've ever worked with. However, I do like to shoot Z-Log 2. It takes some practice, but once you understand how the exposure works in this camera, Z-Log 2 will get the best quality. If you are shooting on Rec. 709 or Z-Log, make sure that your sharpness is on weak. And then for noise reduction, this is all personal preference. Because I film a lot of weddings, I do like to have the noise reduction on weak rather than off, just because I work in a lot of low light scenarios. For your luminance level, just avoid this, you're not losing anything. Down to exposure, your flicker reduction can switch between 50 Hz and 60 Hz, and that's just to match the refresh rate in lights. For your shutter angle, which, make sure you scroll down here and change shutter operation to angle or speed, whichever you prefer. If you don't know how angle works, take 5 minutes, do some research into it, and change it to angle. It's so worth it. Under the general settings, you can adjust whatever you'd like. Let's scroll down to HDMI though, and make sure HDMI OSD is on. I like to see my settings on the monitor. And the main reason that I do is so when I hit record, I can see that I'm recording. I think we've all experienced where we thought we were recording and we weren't. And then when we thought we weren't recording, we were. But what we're actually going to go into now are the user profiles. So let's go back to the main screen. And this is where I really recommend having an iPhone or a tablet or another device just to change these settings really quick. And then afterwards, you can choose whatever you want for a monitoring solution. So let's say for our default, we want to change the ISO. So let's go ahead and go to the lowest one we have, which for the S6 is 400. You may have 500 if you're on an original E2. Once in here, I'm always going to make sure that my shutter degree is 180. If you are more familiar with shutter speed and you're shooting 24 frames per second, make sure that it is at 1/48th of a second. Keep in mind that these settings are meant to be changed as soon as you start filming. So I'm going to set my white balance at 4500 so that I can go either way quicker. Once we have these, I'm just going to check my resolution, which is Cinema 6K. My frame rate is 24 and my encoder is H.265. So right now, this little white bar that you can't see, it is your variable frame rate. And here's where you can change to shoot in slow motion. So let's say I want to go to 48 frames per second. This is where I typically like to shoot. I do love 48 frames per second because I don't like things that are super slow, but I do like having the option if I need it. Once I have it, let's go back into our settings, scroll down to more, go to general, and let's go to user profile, and we're going to save the profile. Now, the only thing that's different about saving the profile from the camera itself versus on the phone is you can rename it on the phone. So let's go ahead and rename this to, I'm going to put Cinema 4K and 48. And that's just saved. Let's say that I want to set up another profile, but I want this to be super slow motion. I'm going to actually change the resolution to 4K 2.4 to 1. I guess it's Cinema 4K 2.4 to 1. And what that gives you is the aspect ratio of just CineScope. This also gives more power back to the sensor and it allows for a much higher frame rate. So if we go into the frame rate options here, I can do 100. If you're on the E2 and you go into the 2.4 to 1 mode, you can shoot all the way up to 160p if you are shooting in H.265. Things change a little bit if you're on ProRes. Once we have the settings set up for a super slow mode, let's go back into the actual settings again, scroll down to more, and then all the way down to the bottom to general. Use a profile, save it, and let's do 100p. Now the last setting that I want to do is I want to change the resolution to be ready if I want to shoot in an anamorphic mode. And to do this, I need to go to a 4:3 aspect ratio. I'm going to scroll up until I see 5K 4:3 and make sure that my frame rate is correct. I really hope that we're able to get a super sample or even just a crop in to shoot slow motion in 4:3. I'm sure it'll come in the future. And let's save this new user profile as anamorphic. Just a little note though, if you shoot an anamorphic and you change the D-squeeze ratio to 1.8 or whatever you need, that will not save to a profile. You will have to manually adjust it each time you switch back and forth from a D-squeeze. To finish out this video, let's wrap back around to the very beginning where we customize our user buttons. Let's go ahead and hit F1, and this is where you can change your frame rate. If you want to shoot slow motion, you can adjust it right here. For function 2, these are our user profiles, and this way you can quickly get to a different resolution or a frame rate without going into the actual menus itself. I set the function 3 as aperture, and the reason that I do that is because I use this clutch handle from Revolver, and this very top scroll wheel directly corresponds to the function 3. So if I move it, it's actually going to adjust my aperture. If you're using cinema lenses, then this doesn't really relate. You can change this to be something else. For the lower thumb wheel, it responds to the shutter degree or the shutter speed. It also responds to the ISO. So if I move this wheel, you can see that my shutter degree is changing. If I click into the wheel and then do it again, now my ISO adjusts. If you're looking to control your camera with another accessory, whether it be a monitor or a handle or something else, this handle is probably going to be the best option. It is pricey, but you just can't beat it. It's so fast, and once you've got it, you'll never want to go back. Finally, for function 4, I actually set it up as END. I don't have the module to control an electronic ND filter, but in the future I will, and that'll let me do it. If you want, for now, which I might do, I might change it to take a photo. I was almost done editing and I realized I forgot some important things. Just two. We set these to be custom buttons as well, and one of the main ones that we changed was the down button and the OK button. The down button is going to be for white balance, but what's really cool about this camera is if you hold it, it will turn on auto white balance until you let go. The white balance on this system for auto is actually pretty dang good. Now the OK button is going to zoom in for you, and that's why we turned off all the manual focus assist, because this will do the zooming in for you if you want, even while you record. I'm going to be creating a lot of content showcasing how I use this camera for weddings and other fast run and gun filmmaking styles. Stay tuned, let me know what you want, and I'll see you on the next one.